Welcome to the video on activity management, health and spa setups. So there are two ways of accessing menu options. One is the ribbon at the top and the other is the folders down the left-hand side. I'll use the folders on the left just for consistency. So before we get into the spa side, we'll have to go to System Administration. And there's a couple of things in here that need to be set up before we can get into the spa booking side. The first thing is the facilities. So you need to create the rooms, the chairs, whatever it is that you're going to be using to book the spa treatments in. So in my example, I have a few rooms and a couple of chairs where I can perform different services. So when you're setting up the facilities, basically all you're going to be doing is clicking New and then giving it the description of the facility and then the display name. Now the display name is going to be used when you're in the booking screen. There's two views on the booking screen. One is to see what's booked per day based on the service provider, or I can do it by the room and see what's happening in each room. So on the room side, that description is what I'm going to see at the top. So from the facility side, you need to give it a display name, and that name is limited to 5 characters. So you need to shorten it to a 5-character code for that. The display sort, again, simply affects how things are displayed on this screen. By default, the system will display the rooms left to right based on the display name that you've given it. So, and in my case, alphabetically. But if I didn't want it that way, if I wanted, for instance, my studios to be the first ones I see, then I can basically use the display sort to override the default and dictate how I want them displayed. If you're going to use the display sort, you're best not to do 1, 2, 3, because if you ever want to change the order, you have to renumber everything. You're best to start and doing it by tens, for instance, and I normally start at 100. So 100, 110, 120, and then if I have to move the order, it's simple to do. I don't have to renumber everything. Gender restriction allows you to restrict that particular room, chair, whatever it is, to only a certain gender if you want. The default sales area should be to your spa sales area. Point of sale area is what this is referring to. Allow multiple. Normally for spa bookings, we turn this on. This means you can book multiple things in the same room at the same time. And you think about it, you need to be able to do that if someone's coming in for a half-day spa package, or just someone is getting a facial and wants to have their nails done at the same time. You need to be able to book 2 things in the same room at the same time. The outdoor facility is not used at the present time. It's for future enhancement. So once I've got this key information in, I need to click on the Spa Management tab and let Jonas know this particular facility I've set up is going to be used for the Spa Management module in Activity Management. So what you need to do is make sure this checkbox is on. This facility can be reserved for spa appointments. Now, depending on what stage you're at in your setup, you may not have your services in here yet. You may not have done the sync, or what may not have set them up in point of sale yet, which is fine. Just make sure this flag is on. If you do have them set up in here, this is where you go through and check which ones that room can be used to perform it. So which services can be done in the lavender room, for instance, in the chair, I've got to restrict it down because there's only certain things that can be done from the stayer book. And then click Save. To set up your other venues, one of the easiest things to do is to simply use Duplicate. Duplicate makes a copy. It's like Save As. And then basically I can just change the description on this screen. And then really the only other thing I may have to do is change the odd service that can be performed in that room. So it's a very quick way rather than starting from scratch each time. Now, the other thing you need to look at is potentially staff. You need to set up your service providers as staff. Now, before you can do the staff, you need to create a grouping. And keep in mind the groupings are key because we're going to talk about setting up commissions, and the commissions are tied in at the group level. So you want to make sure you have a clean separation for your different service providers. So in my case, I'm keeping it simple. I have set up 3 that have to do with spa bookings. I've got the receptionist, which is not going to be performing any service. They may sell product, but they'll be processing bookings, posting charges, that type of thing. And then I have my therapists and my estheticians that will perform different services. So in this group, I basically click New. I give it the description. And then you make sure you flag these 2 on. Can be scheduled on closed days is going to come into play when we talk about scheduling, which is going to be in a separate video which you'll have available. Then you have to click on Spa Commission and set the commission here. Now, at this point, following the logic of this video, you may not have set up your commission plans yet. So this is something you may have to track back to once we set up the commissions. And then click Save. Again, once you've done the groups that you need, then you can go and set up your actual service providers. And this is where you're going to set each person with their information. So very similar to setting up the room, you need to give the name first and last. And then the display name again is limited to 5 characters, so you have to get creative with the display name. The gender of that service provider, you don't have to set that, you can put it to NA. And then which group are they in? There is a place to put in their address, contact, date hired, that type of thing. For most clubs, no, they won't put in the address, but putting in the key contact information like mobile and email is sometimes worthwhile in case you have to call somebody in at the last minute. So at this point, once I filled in this first screen, I now need to go to spa management and, like the rooms, let the system know that this particular staff member is going to be used for spa management bookings by flagging it here. And then I have to click on the Services tab, and if I've got my services from Point of Sale pulled in, this is where I can dictate which services that staff member can perform. Again, if you haven't got these, once you pull them in under the spa management, health and spa settings where you set up these services, you can tell from that side which staff members can be booked for that. Which facilities? This allows you to restrict this staff member to only work in a specific facility. So in my case, if Deborah only ever works in the Aloe, I can set this so she can only ever be booked in that room. If there is no restriction, then you normally just leave this unchecked, which means I can book anyone into any room if it's available. Ranking, if you leave this at 0, the system is simply going to give you, when you're making a booking, the first, based on alphabet and on the display code, person that's available based on the schedule. However, some clubs or clients will, based on seniority, will give those who have been there longer basically first refusal. So in that case, we may want to give these people different rankings. So like Deborah is 10, April is 20. So if they're both available, the system will default to Deborah because she's got a higher ranking. And again, commissions, if you set up the commission plan, but rather than all estheticians and all therapists giving the same commission. It's different because of seniority. You can override it at the staff level and say, no, I'm going to override this and say that for Deborah, she gets a straight commission of 10%, which basically overrides our standard commission setting. And then click Save to save it. When you're setting up the additional service providers, again, you can use duplicate to very quickly copy and then just change the key information in which services they provide and any change to the commission if you're setting it at the staff level. Now the last piece in here is resources. SPA doesn't necessarily use a lot of resources in this one. There might be the odd one where maybe we have only 2 sets of hot stones. I might want to set them up so the system can track those. So basically you're just giving it a description, the quantity you have on hand, and track availability means that if you try and book a third one, it will not allow it because you basically have used up all your available ones. Now, again, just like the rooms and the staff, you have to tell Jonas that this particular item is being used for SPA and which services it goes with. So now we're going to go to Health and Spa, Setups, and we'll look at the setups on this side. Settings you won't touch. Those are normally set by the Jonas installer with your assistance, and normally we expect you to call us if you want to make changes within that setting. The services and the service categories will basically be pulled in from the point of sale based on the settings on the point of sale side. So normally there's nothing you have to do with either of those. The only thing is for the services, we highly recommend that if you set up new services and you pull them over from point of sale, you come in here, go to settings, and set the duration. If you don't set the duration, when you're doing a booking, it defaults to 0, and it'll keep prompting you, won't let you save it until you set the duration, the end time. So to make it cleaner when you're making a booking, it's always good to give it the default duration. You can always override that on individual bookings. This is just the default. Again, if you haven't already set it, this is where you can go into the staff and say which staff can perform that service, which resources are required for that service, and which rooms that service can be performed in. These fields cannot be changed. They're coming from the point of sale. So if you want to change the price of the item or the description, you will need to change it in point of sale, and then when the system does its sync every 24 hours, it'll update that information. Service category groups are optional. Not every client sets these up, but you might want to set them up, and all they're used for is to help when you're in here viewing the different rooms or bookings. You can do it by service category group. So if I wanted to combine all the massages and wraps into one grouping, I can do that. So basically you just give it a description and say which categories go into that. As I said, it'll work perfectly fine if you do not set that. It only comes into play in this screen. Now the commission plans. As you saw when setting up the staff and the groups, the staff groups, there was a link for the commission plan. This is where you can actually define what those commissions are. So I've got 3 levels of commissions. I've got a service provider, therapists, and reception. So reception obviously makes no commission on services because they're not doing services, but I'm saying that they get a commission on products that they might sell. My service providers are getting a commission on services and products, and same with the therapists. So you can have as many different commission plans as you like. So let's look at the therapists. And first of all, I click on service, and I can either set my commission by individual item, which can be a bit taxing, especially if you change services that are available. You'll have to remember to come in here and edit them. Most clubs are doing it by the category. Now, it's perfectly fine to have it with different commission rates for different categories. So for instance, massages may be one percentage of commission, and then wraps a different, and then aesthetic stuff can be a third one. That's perfectly fine. Basically, all you do is in this white screen below, you would right click and click Add New, which would effectively bring up this screen for you. So we can do a sliding scale or straight line. Most commonly, it's straight line. And then this is where I define it. So I can either set it, as I said, if each category has a different commission rate, I can set them up separately. So there'd be one with a different percentage for each one. In my case, I'm giving a flat commission across all services. So for the therapist, I'm saying anything, any service they perform with a value of 1 cent through $1 million, I want it based on a percentage, or you can do it as just a flat amount. They get 40% of every service. Now you'll notice at the bottom there is a flag here for calculate commission. This is dictated actually by the policies of the individual clients. The idea is if this flag is on, if the therapist performs a service and I comp that service, we're still going to calculate a commission at the full value of it. If the flag is off, then no, they basically won't get a commission on it because it's calculated based on what we're charging. Products, so if they get a commission on their products, same idea. And again, I can do it across the board as I have here, where I'm saying all categories, or I can set it by the category. So I could go in and tell it that facial creams are 1%, eyelash care is another one, clothing if I'm selling it, moisturizers can be a different commission. But again, in my example, I'm doing a straight commission across the board. So these therapists are getting a 5% commission on every product they sell. And then again, if I comp a product, do they still get their commission? Or in this case, the way I have it set up, no, if I comp the product, they won't get a commission. And then just save. So once you've got those commission plans set up, remember that you would have to go back to System Admin, Activity Setups, Staff, or Staff Groups, depending on if it's across the board. In a perfect world, Staff Groups would work better because then it's attached to the appropriate group. Spa Commission, and I say that we are doing commission, and I want this plan applied for that. Payouts allows me to say that yes, they get gratuities and service charges. So this is something over and above that. So if I have the point of sale configured to automatically add on 18% to every service, and I allow people to leave an extra gratuity for the service provider as they're paying for it, this simply tells the system to track those as well for reporting purposes. And again, I can override that at the individual staff level if I want to. And that is it for the setups.